Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Podward State. My name is Matthew Ogden. Joining me, as always, my co-hosts Sam Brungo and Matt Paolizzi.
Once again, we are joined by an awesome guest in this episode of Podward State. We've had a lot of great guests this season, and we're keeping it going for you guys.
Joining us today is a man who played defensive tackle at Penn State, got first team All-Big Ten 2012, drafted in the third round of the NFL draft. He won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. He now works with The Bridge, turning old properties into eco-villages in the inner city. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Hill. Jordan, how you doing?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me.
Obviously, you're from Harrisburg, but you had other offers in Pennsylvania. What made you choose Penn State?
So craziest thing was I was actually committed to Rutgers. I always wanted to go to Penn State. That was actually the first team to start recruiting me, and then Coach Johnson kind of let me know, like, hey, you know, we have no film of you on defensive line, and you haven't come up to camp. We're probably not going to offer you. So I kind of just turned my attentions to other places. And then at that time, when Rutgers offered me, it was like a year before. They were number 3 in the country when they had Ray Rice, was it Leonard, the fullback, and they were rolling. So I was just like, hey, I think I'm gonna take my football career to Piscataway. But as I kept kind of going through my senior year, I just always wanted to go to Penn State. I don't even know if a lot of coaches even looked. I was looking at, possibly trying to just get up there and be enrolled as a regular student, and then have a potential to maybe try and walk on there. And then later in my senior year, kind of found out that Penn State was coming to one of our games. Probably had the best game of my life, and then that kind of opened it back up. I mean, once Penn State offered me, it was a wrap from there. Like you said, I'm from Harrisburg, grew up an hour and a half away. Always, had passion for Penn State and loved, watching them growing up. Favorite team was always the 2005 team that played in the Orange Bowl, and kind of got things rolling again.
It was either 8th grade or 9th grade. I had one of your teammates came and was our student coach. It was Evan Hales. I don't know if you remember Evan. He went on and on about how he had other offers, but Larry Johnson was really like the catalyst to get him to Penn State. So what did Larry Johnson and Joe Paterno mean to your recruitment, and what did they mean to your college football career?
Well, LJ was the biggest reason and determining factor of why I fell in love with Penn State. Being recruited by him is something, and then being able to be coached up is a whole nother thing. He, in my opinion, he is the best defensive line coach, that there is. NFL, college, high school, whatever. He's the guy. He's that guru, whatever you want to say. And I mean, just his short stint here at Ohio State, you could see you got top 4 picks. That's crazy. I mean, it's the passion that he has for you to succeed. I believe in every successful player that he's had, or any player he's coached on the D-line, you learn to hate him at one point in your career, because he's going to ride you and get on you so bad. And it's only for the good. And he does it in such I'd say a passive aggressive way. Because, I mean, Coach Johnson doesn't cuss, but it's just like he works you each and every day. And for me, it was after my freshman year. It would have been my sophomore spring ball, where I played as a true freshman. I'm like, all right, I can do this. I can play in the Big Ten. And then we go into spring ball, and I'm like, I don't know if I can play football. Like, I don't know if I'm any good. And he got me to a point where it was just like, hey, it's that hard, but once you get through this, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And by the end of that spring ball, I was in that top 3 rotation, because he really likes to play 3 to 4 defensive tackles, 4 if he really can. And I was always that next guy in by the time I was a sophomore.
So you had your basically a breakout year, your junior year. You led the defense in tackles, and then that 2012 team is obviously lauded and legendary now. So like going into 2012, you're obviously like a defensive captain. So did that impact basically your decision to stay among all of the controversy?
I don't know if being necessarily a captain was. It was just like, hey. Like the place had given me so much, whether I be on the field or off the field. Just really fell in love with State College and the people and the university and that program. I told myself, I mean, the only way I would have left or transferred was if we weren't going to be playing football. It's like, hey, it's my senior year, there's the end goal. I'm trying to make the NFL. And if I don't play, it kind of goes out of the door, or I don't get drafted, something like that. But I mean, when it came down to it, it was just like, all right, it's time to buckle up. A lot of people don't know there was after the sanctions were dropped, there was a players meeting, like, so to say, some of the leaders and captains of the team. And it was Mike Maudie, Zordich, myself, Silas Red, and Justin Brown. We all lived right near each other out in Copper Beach. Zordich and Maudie come over to the apartment, and we're like, trying to strategize and put something together, and then kind of just putting a plan of action together, how we keep this thing together. And we left that day like, hey, this is our thought process. This is how we keep this thing together. And we kind of went from there. Now, as we progressed, my two roommates, they ended up were two of the major guys that transferred, being in Justin and Silas. And that was a whole other story in itself.
Yeah, so obviously a very difficult time for Penn State, for the team, and for the community at large in the wake of that scandal. What was it like to be in State College at that time, just seeing how it affected all these different people?
I mean, seeing the people that lived there and grew up there, Sam knows, through all this, I actually, got one of my best friends to this day through the sanctions. He's a State College kid. And just kind of seeing how that affected him, his family, just like, this is what they grew up on. This is what they lived for. This is, this is a part of their everyday life. And they're here in the town. So, a lot of people just look to football, but it affected a lot more than that. Not having people, the thought of not having people come up or getting a death penalty, how that changed the livelihood of people's income. And kind of it was a trickle down effect and how everything would play out if we got the worst.
Obviously, there was a lot of questions going around. It's like, who's going to come in next? And I remember they were talking about Al Golden was going to come in and all this stuff. And then what was going through your heads whenever you guys found out it was going to be Bill O'Brien coming in? And what did you guys know about him? What were your initial reactions?
So we were on winter break. It was like that weekend before, it had been a Saturday or Friday or Saturday before school started in that first or second week in January. And we find out kind of, it was a team text, and then right away, like, I'm talking, you turn the TV on after we get text, breaking news on ESPN, Bill O'Brien's hired as Penn State's next head coach. And the only thing we're seeing for 2 days is him screaming at Tom Brady. So we're like, all right, we got a firecracker coming in here, and he's coming in here, with an agenda and trying to get things straightened out. So we weren't quite sure. We weren't, somebody we didn't know. So you couldn't be sold on them. And then I'm talking that next Sunday, we have our first team meeting, and we're off to the races already.
That 2012 team, you guys went 8-4. I know the Iron Lions documentary it bills it as the most improbable 8-4 team of all time. How did Bill O'Brien's coaching, how did his leadership contribute to the success of that season?
Yeah, his coaching was one thing, but it was the way that he handled us. He came into it, wanted to take control of the team right away, and he did. But he treated us as adults, and he did it in like he's no BS, no, that's just how he is. If you had a good day, he's going to tell you had a good day, and if you suck, he's going to MF you and say you suck today. It was just clear cut. And for us, especially older guys, that's all we want. It's like, hey, are we doing good? Are we up to par? Are we doing what you want? And do you think you're coming from the NFL? Do you think we have a shot? And he would tell you flat out. He was honest with you. And you have to respect that. I know I've had bad days, and he told me, like, hey, you suck today. You're supposed to be good. I'm like, I appreciate that, because I never want to string, bad days together.
One story in particular about Bill O'Brien, obviously, is after the Michigan game, and he's on the interview, and he's like,
they're a bunch of fuckers. They fight hard.
Do you have like one story about Bill O'Brien that really stands out to you?
I'll give you two. So in that first meeting, he's there. When he opened it up for questions, guys were asking like just football stuff, general stuff. And I think I asked like the first strange question, and he's like trying to wrap it up. I'm like, hey coach, it's like before we roll, I'm like, hey, I got a question for you. I'm like, are we allowed to have facial hair? Because with Joe, we weren't, we were cut, long hair, and he like looks at us like we're crazy. He's like, the hell are you guys talking about? He's like, we're not allowed to have facial hair. He's like, oh, that's why you guys all don't have none now. And he just starts laughing. He's like, absolutely. I'd say the second story, it was first winter workout, and it's what I think with Fitz, our new strength coach, it was like 4:15 in the morning or 5:15 in the morning. Definitely think it was 4:15 because I think I woke up at 3:30. We're in Haluba Hall. We're going through workouts. I want to say, we're damn near 45 minutes into it, and you just hear O'Brien screaming, and we're like, all right, this first workout, yep, he's doing what we've seen on ESPN. He's screaming, and he's going at the older guys and whatnot. Long story short, I mean, I was actually one of the guys he ended up, really going at, and workout's over. I shower up. I'm walking through like the All-American Hall. It's only me. He's like, he must have been waiting. He's standing at the end. I'm like, damn it, man. I'm walking with my head down. I walk in, like trying to avoid him. Like, I don't want no type of confrontation. And he's like, pick your head up, looks at me, gives me a Vince Wilfork story. And then I'm like, well, like, what? I thought I was doing good. He was like, oh yeah, you were doing really good today. He was just like, you're one of the quiet leaders, and you lead by example, I was told. So I had to go at you, so I got the respect for all the younger guys. And I was like, right from there, I was just like, I understood what he's trying to do, and like my respect level went out of the roof for him right away.
So building on that leadership that Coach O'Brien noticed in you, as sort of a senior leader on that team, and also as a leader the season prior to, in the midst of the scandal, what was going through your head at that time? Like, what did you feel like was your responsibility to the team to try and keep things together? And then going into 2012 with all the success that you guys had, what success would you attribute both to your leadership and to the team?
For me, it was keeping things normal, keeping the main thing. Everything else we couldn't control. What was going to happen to us, we couldn't control. But what we could do is wake up, make sure we're on time, make sure we're doing workouts. And when we're there, we're busting our ass and we're doing the things that we had to do to because if we do play football, I don't want to be in a position where it's like, oh man, we underprepared. We're out of shape because of all of this. Like, let's not get that, in our way. Let's keep the main thing, control the controllable, and go from there. And I think we did a really good job. And the craziest thing about it all was the things that we hated the most about football and morning workouts became the things that we really loved, because it was like, hey, when we're there, everything else didn't matter. It was getting this dominator done. It was getting this last sprint done. It was this last rep in the weight room. That's all that mattered. We, that the other stuff wasn't on our mind. Sanctions weren't on our mind. It was just out of the door. Reporters aren't in there. I'd say media probably made it the worst for us. We're walking through Nittany Halls and they're jumping out of bushes and stuff with microphones, putting it in our face.
So building off of that too, I mean, you guys were able to find success, and you were able to find success as well personally. First team All Big Ten in 2012, and that accumulated in your, a special time on draft night. Getting drafted by the Seahawks in the third round. What was that experience like for you to hear your name called at the NFL draft? I can imagine it must have felt unreal.
Oh yeah, it was surreal. It was a surreal moment. I actually stayed up in State College. I was in my apartment. My roommate, one of them, like I said, Sam knows Steven Springer. That was one of my roommates. We were still living together there. We stayed up there, had my family come up, a couple of my friends from home, and just hoping that I got called on that second day. That's where I was, kind of projected to go, was either second or third round. And it was getting late on that day. I'm like, oh man, I got these people up here and my name's not going to get called. And then I actually did get a call from the Cowboys saying, hey, we got two picks in the third round, just kind of stay by your phone, be ready. Both of them go by. I think one of them was like even a kicker, and I'm just like, oh, are you serious? And after the Cowboys, I think it was the Colts picked, and when the Colts were about to pick, that's when I got the call, and everybody starts cheering, thinking I got picked to Indianapolis, and I'm getting a call from Pete Carroll, and I never. The craziest thing, I only had talked to one scout, so really never talked to the Seahawks through the whole draft process. From there, it was just that night was like a blur. After that, and my mom told me I was on the phone for like an hour after getting picked, because it's just like you talk to your GM, you talk to the head coach, talk to your D-line coach. Then they got me right into the media. I picked my number on that same phone call, like crazy. Yeah, got it all out the way, and yeah, man. As soon as I hung up, I went down. I was in my room was in the basement. I was down there. My dad just must have been waiting on me, because I wanted to finish up. And my dad's just like very monotone like me, quiet. Don't really get much emotion from him. And I just seen him tear up. I just start bawling, like just thanking him, because, it's hard to see what was on me my whole life. It was just like everything was put into perspective. All the hard work's put into perspective right then and there. And why you did those, why you did those morning workouts, those hard workouts, live for life, which sucked. Those workouts are terrible. But why you did them, and it pays off.
It's like what's cool is you went from this lauded institution of Penn State, and then you joined the the Seahawks. They that was the peak Legion of Boom years, as they say, and then they go to the Super Bowl during your rookie season. So that was basically essentially just a crash course into the NFL right away. So tell us about what that was like.
Yeah, it was wild. So I get drafted last weekend in April. I graduate from Penn State that first weekend in May. And by the second weekend in May, I'm already practicing in Seattle, rookie minicamp. And that's the whole thing that people don't get from when you're a senior. When we didn't have a bowl game, I got surgery on my knee. So from January until that, it would have been February, that next February after the Super Bowl, it's nonstop at all. That's what people don't understand. They hear the rookie wall and all like that, but you're just going. All gas, no break. But it was wild. It was wild. I'm going into a team, that for that defense, that goes down as one of the best defenses ever that year. To be able to make that team was an accomplishment in itself. But when I get there, mind you, I played, not even a full year for O'Brien. So most of my background is playing for Joe, and going out to play for Pete. It was literally like recess. Playing for Joe and then going to Pete is one extreme to another extreme. So the freedom was definitely something that I had to, overcome, just understanding being a pro, being stuff, it was a whole different scene. All the structure in the world at Penn State, where it was a lot looser, going out to Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, especially that defense, that must have been just incredible to play with. I mean, legends like Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas, all those guys, some of the best defensive players of the last 20 years, if not all time. What was it like to sort of see those guys, especially in your rookie season?
I mean, going into it, those are the people that you see. The year before was when Richard Sherman got into it with Skip Bayless. So that's what is Sherm. You're just there's a lot of characters out here. The two guys I really knew because of the one was a Skip and then the other was Marshawn. It's just Marshawn from college. And then, I'm playing for the Bills. Then obviously, his run against the Saints in the playoffs. So it's you walk in, it's just character after character or face after face that you just seen. It's all, they have a lot of star power. I think the wildest thing that people don't actually necessarily understand about that team, we had two All-Pros that didn't even start on the defensive line, and Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett. They didn't start that year. Mm-hmm. They were really, they're coming in to be pass rushers. Cliff was coming in off being franchise tagged by the Lions, and then Mike Bennett was coming in on like a 1-year deal. And those two were the biggest factor, in my opinion, coming in and changing that defense. Because as good as the pass defense can, if you don't got pass rush, it doesn't matter. And those two really changed the game coming in on that. And after the year after, that's when they were all pros for like 2-3 years. And that's crazy.
One of my friends growing up was Joey Paterno, and growing up, his dad always had Michael Robinson over at the house, and he had a YouTube show called The Real Rob Report. So I got to see everything in the locker room, and I was like ride or die for the Seahawks that year. So who was your favorite NFL teammate?
I don't know necessarily if it was the coolest to be around. I tell you what, it was the first like actual teammate my whole life that I looked up to, from high school, college, NFL. Like, there was a first teammate that was just like, I looked up to him. Like, I want to kind of follow his lead, and that was Cam Chancellor. The way he practiced, the way he conducted himself, and the way he just, went about his business, it was just like, if I can do a lot of the same things like that in a different, in my way, I'll be successful. And he had a really good career. He ended up getting injured there at the end, but he was a guy that I looked up to, because he wasn't a big rah-rah guy all the time, where, some guys are just talking all the time. You're just like, all right, enough is enough. He'll prove it by his play too. So that was definitely somebody I looked up to. I played as a true freshman, and my first snap, I go in the game, and it's like memorable. I go in, I run in, and I must have been wide-eyed. Then Sean Lee pulls my shoulder. He's like, do what the hell you've been doing at practice all year, and you're going to be fine. He's like, you've been whooping their ass. Just do it now. And then he looks, he's like, you got me, and he points over, and you got him. Like, points right next to him, and it's Sean Lee and Navarro Bowman. He's just like, just go. And first play I go in, and I'm pretty sure it was the first play I played up there. I got like a tackle for loss, and then he runs up and he's going nuts, and he's like, I told you. And it's just like, that's cool, man. You got guys that are going to be NFL stars, and they were. Those are two of the best that we've ever had at Penn State, and two of the best that's ever played in the NFL.
Obviously started out 0-3 this season for the first time since 2001. What's going on, man, with the current state of Penn State? What's your take on just the team, Franklin, how they can improve in their last 4 games?
We got to find a way to win. If you get that first one out of the way, man, it becomes a lot easier. I think people can now realize why, sometimes we don't play the best of team on the first game. It's just getting that first W out of the way. Because if you start off rough, it's hard to find one. It's just getting into a groove. So when you start off like that, and you started off in such a way where, we should have won. That's not a 2-point conversion. It's not, it's not good. But how do we not get in that position? So just finding ways to win. And you just got to start, at practice each and every day. Just, you turn it into a competition in everything you do. Make everything a win and a loss. Start winning, It's as simple as that. This week somebody's going to get a W because there's 2 teams that are winless. So somebody's going to get their first one this week, and I hope it's us. A lot plays into the factor. I know, with Coach Franklin, his presser, he even admitted that he's kind of struggling not having his family up there. Like, these are unprecedented times. Like, it's stuff that we won't ever go through again in our lifetime, hopefully. And it's something that we've got to kind of get through. He is a person that holds his family and his people that he's close to, near and dear to his heart. So that I could see how that definitely does affect him. That could be a trickle-down effect, or that could be the same thing for other guys. Like, hey, I haven't seen mom and dad for a long time. You gotta realize that these are, still 18, 19-year-old kids that are a year or 2 removed from living with mom and dad. But when it really comes down to it, it's just like, hey, we got to knuckle up and find a way to fight.
What's your take on how the defenses looked these first 3 games? Like, they showed promise against Indiana, but then they kind of, fell flat. I guess they did what they could against Ohio State, and Justin Fields is just incredible. Yeah. But then in that third game against Maryland, they just looked kind of lost. Like, where do you think? Like, who do you think that falls on? Do you think it has to do with the loss of defensive line coach Sean Spencer in the offseason?
I mean, I don't know a lot about our new defensive line coach, but I can tell you this: like our first game against Indiana, Jason and Shaka, they both, that week they were rated the highest defensive ends in college football.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you something right away. And they're still hearing from a familiar voice that hasn't been removed, because they have a GA in Deion Barnes, who was the starting defensive end with me my senior year. So they are still hearing, familiar voices, because there are guys, that's a guy that they know. So they're the same kind of thing. Something's just kind of got to click. I really think they are getting a lot better. Justin Fields, he got the same amount of touchdowns as he does incompletions right now. That's crazy. Like, that's nuts. There's not much that you can do with that. When a guy's in a groove like that, the guy's in a groove. It's just like 2-3 years ago when JT Barrett went like 16 for 16 against us in that second half. Like, he never did that again in his life, nor did he do it before. So you're playing, for some reason we always get that end of the stick at Penn State. We always get a guy on their best game, or it's just like one of those God moments. But we have to just kind of dig down and hone into it. We got some young guys that it's their first time starting. I think it is promising for the future, though. Like, you got a young guy like Joey Porter Jr. out there starting. The kid from State College, that's a corner. He'll be, hopefully getting healthy or whatever and rolling back in. He got a lot of playing experience last year. Young defensive line. I know we got, Shaka's a senior, but, on the inside, I really like PJ Mustipher. Linebackers, Brandon Smith is going to be really good. Lance Dixon's going to be really good. And we do got some guys, younger guys that will be coming in, or red shirts or whatever you want to say, that will play. I think on the offensive side, it's promising. We got 2 true freshmen that are ones that starting and that are like seriously playing. You got to think about this year too. Like, this stuff doesn't count for their eligibility. So if a guy chooses not to make this count, it doesn't count. So this, you got to take the good with the bad. So all of this playing experience is going to help us in the future here.
And so what are your thoughts with Dotson and the offense in general?
I mean, we've been looking for a guy since Hamler left, and that was the biggest question on offense this offseason. And I think he's more than, announced his name and appeared that he's ready. And to say he's had good performances is an understatement. Last week he had over 200 yards. 200 yards. I think, did he have it against Ohio State too?
I think so, yeah. I think he's leading the Big Ten in reception yards and touchdowns. So, I mean,
that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, maybe Allen Robinson was the last guy to kind of lead it like that, but I don't think we've had a guy that's been leading every category in receiving in a long time. So we got to build off of that.
Jordan, you retired officially last year. What's next for you? You're working on the bridge, creating eco villages. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm the chief community officer at the bridge. What we're doing in nuts and bolts, we're a real estate development company, and our niche is kind of going into inner city types of areas and, building up these beautiful infrastructures already in old schools, old malls, old abandoned buildings, and making them what they used to be and even better. They're being self-sustained buildings. Our acronym is WELP, and that stands for Work, Eat, Learn, Live, and Play. That kind of stems from Maslow's hierarchy of need. So when, a human never has to leave our facility and they can do everything they possibly need to do. The founder and CEO is Gary Gilliam, somebody you guys may know. And he's a, alumni with me at Penn State and actually played with me in Seattle as well. We were talking about it this past summer. Me and Gary are probably both each other's longest tenured teammates, like crazy, and then we actually played against each other in high school. His high school was my high school's kind of rival in high school. It was only school we went 500 against. We went 2-2 against Milton Hershey. but yeah, he's the brains. Him and his old roommate from Milton Hershey, and actually a Penn State alum as well, Corey Dupree. They're the brains of this thing. They are the founders, and they kind of came to me with this, this idea, and they had already taken steps to secure the building, and what we're going to be able to do is going to be beautiful for the city, but really for what we really want to do is affect this country and this world in a way different way than sports could ever do.
Yeah, so like even during your career, you've always had a a significant interest in off the field work, making the world a better place. Tell us a little bit about your foundation. I know it raises money and fights diabetes and kidney disease. Have you guys been doing anything recently, especially considering the the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so we've kind of been doing smaller boutique types of events, trying to get people to come out and feel safe and figure it out. I mean, just like anybody else, we're trying to figure it out how to conduct events and how to raise money and how to affect people's lives. But yeah, the Jordan Hill Foundation, it started back when I was at Penn State. The reason it's for diabetes and kidney disease research is because that's what my dad suffers from currently. And it started kind of back, it would have been that sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, my first blue-white game. After the game, we're tailgating and whatnot behind Haluba Hall. And my dad kind of passes out. I catch him. You know how dad's son is. You see a dad fall or something like that, just kind of start laughing, making fun of him. And I look at his eyes, and his eyes are like rolling in the back of his head. And I'm like, the hell is going on? We get him, we sit him down. He kind of comes back. And that's kind of when my mom explained to me that, he hadn't worked since the day that I enrolled at Penn State because he had had a stroke the day, that night after I enrolled. And, he became disabled from that. And I didn't know I didn't see the complications. I'd seen for a day. I seen him 8 times that year, 8 home games at Penn State. So how could I really see? He'd always be sitting down, and after a game, you kind of just don't take notice. So right then and there, that's kind of when things like life put everything in perspective for me. Just like, hey, I need to help, and wanting to do that, it was just like, hey, how do we not put other people in this situation, or how do we prevent it? Because I don't want another football player, I don't want another person to feel that feeling that I had that day. So that's when that foundation really started. Then I actually do have another one, the Family Sports Association back here in Harrisburg, and right now we're kind of shut down because obviously we can't really play. But what we want to be able to do is become basically an engine for all the youth sports around here, and one, to become a money generator for them, and they really don't have to worry about revenue, but 2, make sure it's a unified, ran 501c3, because I think in this generation now and nowadays, people kind of take advantage of youth programs, and they try to make $1 off of it, and where we're just trying to make sure we're doing the right things by the kids.
So, I mean, the Bridge and your foundation obviously have been doing great work, sort of in your post playing career. I think your other 2 big things that have come up have been coaching at Cumberland Valley High School, sort of giving back to that next generation of football players, and also being a father. So building off of those 2 things, how do you think your playing career, what lessons did you learn in football that helped you both as a coach and as a father?
Football in itself, I think, is nothing but life experience, and it's kind of just like a teacher. There's ups and downs. Nothing's ever as planned. You can plan all the ways that you want, and it's just not going to look that way. You can draw up a play, and the one that is successful is probably sometimes the one where a bunch of guys messed up. And that one where everybody hit the right blocks and hit it in the right techniques is the one where we slipped and fell. It's just like that stuff like that. That is a life lesson. That's how it goes. And for me, going through what we did my senior year up at Penn State, I mean, that's a prime example of, these are the cards that you're dealt, and find a way to fight through and figure it out. Just don't ever fold. And that's always going to be one of the biggest things, whether I'm coaching or parenting, that, I teach. It's just like, hey, all the glamming and glitz it looks good, but to get there, there's a lot of hills and valleys that you had to go through. Just check us out on both websites, thejordanhillfoundation.org, and then you can go to thebridgeecovillage.com. Go out, check us out, find out how for the bridge, find out how you can volunteer and how you can get involved. There's a lot of different ways. We'll have groundbreaking here hopefully soon. And going from there, there's a lot that goes into it. So we'll need a lot of help, a lot of volunteer work, and just getting down and building a bridge. It's this day. We're building a bridge for people.
Jordan, man, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this morning. Growing up in State College is really that 2012 team. We looked at you guys, like the community looked at you guys as such like a saving grace for what was going on, because even though we weren't directly involved in the football team, it was still such a big part of our lives, all the things that were going on. So it's been really cool to get to know you over the last couple of years, and really appreciate everything that you've done for this community.
Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for listening. That was our awesome interview with Jordan Hill, Penn State great, Penn State legend. I don't know about you guys, but I thought it went awesome. I was super happy with it.
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing conversation, and thank you again to Jordan for taking the time to talk to us.
Like you said, you can check him out on his website for his foundation and for the bridge. You can follow them on all social media. We'll tag them below in the description. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day and take it easy.